sorry for the action scenes here, but here you can never be sure where to stand. Hello from my side too. I have to gather myself a bit, and as we have talked a lot today about the principles, talked about theoretical factors and all kinds of principles that there are concerning elections, I am going to go to a bit more practical approach on the election organization, on election administration, and actually this talk is based on a scientific paper that was issued in this conference, and the concerns actually a bit different topics that the panel is concentrated on. It concerns equality when talking about voting methods, equality between voting methods, and these questions are being discussed in Estonia in a study group at the University of Technology, where different cost-related questions concerning democratic elections are studied and researched. And this concrete paper is actually on multi-dimensional elections. That means elections that have lots of different possibilities of voting, different voting methods, and comparing or trying to find a way how to scientifically proven to find some substantial cost factors between these different voting methods. So where actually it all began, or what's the theoretical background there? We see that voter turnout in democracies is declining everywhere. That's a fact that has been seen throughout many years already. And what governments are actually doing, of course many governments too that are also present here, is adding alternative means of voting, adding different ways to catch the voter, to get the voter to elections in order to raise the turnout, and by raising the turnout, raise the legitimacy of the actual elections. That also includes internet and postal voting, but we'll come to that in a bit. But what it does bring, it brings us complex multi-channel elections. When you compare elections held on one day, maybe having only a side method of voting abroad, and all else is being held on one day, compared to countries like Estonia, where I come, where we have more than 14 different ways of voting. And this guarantees the complexity that makes it really, really tough to actually compare these different voting methods and to have policy analysis and look through the policy actions, that maybe some of these voting methods are too costly or attract too few voters compared to the actual monetary costs they attract. So that means you could have all kinds of different alternative voting channels, starting from postal voting, advanced voting. We heard today from, there's a question about voting abroad in diplomatic missions, in proxy voting, home voting, and of course internet voting, that's unfortunately not too widely present in the field of elections. So what does multi-channel elections bring to the field of elections? It increases the complexity, and the increased complexity actually requires complex business processes. And in order to actually make sense what these processes do, we need process re-engineering. So what this working group and this actual paper tries to do is to bring business process re-engineering to election field. And that's something that has not been done in such a way. And it also involves analyzing the cost of new voting channels that have been introducing. Well, that has always been the case. When we look at the methodology that comes out of this project, it could be used both ex post and ex ante, so that when policy analysts have the duty to analyze whether to include one additional voting method or not, they produce and analyze the actual costs that the new voting method brings, and then decide whether it's wise to actually introduce it or not. So what we see is that in these permanent reforms, voter convenience, and by increasing voter convenience, higher turnout is achieved, but increased complexity, the impact on the election administration quality is brought, and as many theorists have already found out, that the cost of election also increase. So at one point the governments have to decide whether all these added new ways of voting are actually lucrative enough to keep them going, and do they attract enough voters, raise the turnout enough for the money they actually are being paid. So this project is actually looking into these things covered earlier. So we re-engineer the processes present in all voting methods by using activity-based costing, theoretical understanding that all costs can be accrued to a specific activity. And this activity-based costing is then applied to all the different voting methods. And when you look at the paper, there's lots more about where this activity-based costing model comes from, but it is applicable to election processes, and you can make really good connections from these solutions. And from that, election administrators, policy analysts, governments can actually make different choices regard to introducing new voting channels or losing already existing voting channels, or replace voting channels when you know the actual cost-effective combination of those. So we are in the beginning of the work. There has been a lot of theoretical work already, but one case study has been looked upon, and that's Estonia, and that's why I'm also here, because this case itself is a really good example of academic and EMB, or election management body, cooperation, and that's something that I would highly recommend, that the EMBs do a lot of good cooperation with the academic side, because that's where fresh ideas and fresh understanding comes from. So, the case of Estonia. Maybe many of you already know, as already said, Estonia is one of those countries that throughout the re-independence, since the beginning of the 90s, has had a history of using a lot of voting methods in order to attract as many voters as possible. So we have reached now the point where we have, as I already said, more than 10 different voting methods. And the question raises that, is this all feasible in the long run? At the point we are discussing quite large reform packet in the Parliament, as I just left Tallinn yesterday, it was on the Parliament floor, and there we are trying to lose two of those voting methods, but simply because nobody used them anymore. One of those, for example, was voting on ships. Estonia had a separate voting method of voting on ships. But because we have internet voting, this has replaced a lot of different manual voting methods. And we are also currently discussing whether voting abroad through embassies and through postal voting to embassies is actually feasible in the long run. Up until the year 2005, when we first introduced internet voting abroad in these embassies and through mail to embassies, well, the usage of these voting methods was low. Maybe 2,000 people out of, at that point, maybe 30,000, 40,000 expats. But now we have reached a point where the addition of a, I would say, a bit cheaper and better accessible voting method, cheaper also for the voter, in the case of internet voting, has raised the number of votes abroad more than 10 times. So that the method of voting in different situations matters. And if you have the tools to actually analyze this, then you can also make conscientious decisions how to actually go forward. And we are currently discussing whether it would be actually wise to lose all embassy voting and mail voting altogether, because there are different and more accessible possibilities there. In the Estonian case, the research group has analyzed the data we had, and the activities in the Estonian case were really, really high, and the focus only, or the group focuses only on those channels that run differently. When you are working in the polling station, a lot of the things are working the same, so they are comparable also on the scale of costs. But if you compare different voting channels, the voter also acts differently, then you can get a different result. So what the model does, it takes the voting process down to bare bits and gets hundreds and hundreds of different actions and start to put it together again in order to get a cost of what does one ballot cost in this voting method. Unfortunately, we are still in the preliminary phases with our actual results, but what I can say is that based on this data analysis, we can see that some voting methods compared to internet voting or also these traditional voting on election day, the difference in the voting cost per one ballot is more than 8 times. And that gives the incentive not only for the EMB, but also food or source for the EMB or the lawmaker to actually make some changes there. So really quick conclusions here that the first results will be published in autumn in the conference in Bregenz in Austria. But yeah, the outcome will be a really handy tool for EMBs and policy planners worldwide to actually get your resources optimized and improve your processes. And it allows comparable results within one country or within one process. But if you get the cost of one vote or one ballot per the this voting method. Unfortunately, you can't actually take this out of your own context, but you still can compare it in your own system. So, if you have any questions about the whole code, program, or cost of the democratic elections, then Professor Krimmer from the University of Technology is the best source. But there's the elections and the rest, I will be happy to actually accommodate you. Thank you.